Hi, everybody. This is Monique Blake. Welcome back to ZENTS Wellness Room and to part 2 in the series of the emotion of fear. So, the last series, we talked a little bit about what the emotion of fear was. We talked about it being a physical, emotional, energetic, mental response to an emergency. And now, in the second part, I want to talk a little bit about just the spectrum of emotions that can play a part when we're experiencing fear. So, there is a spectrum to every emotion. And I think this is important to note because a lot of times we tend to categorize emotions as good or bad. And there's no gray space for allowing for opportunities or different perspective when we limit them to either good or bad. Certainly, fear is an emotion that feels uncomfortable. There's no denying that. But if we lump it as something that is only bad, then we take away an opportunity to see what it can offer us, what growth it can offer us, what opportunities it can offer us, what shift or change it can bring for us. So in this series, I'm going to talk a little bit about just some of the spectrum of emotions that may come into play when you are feeling fear. And on one end of the spectrum, which is our opportunity to, so to say, our opportunity when it comes around fear, at the end of that spectrum, we have action. Because ultimately, that is what fear, the emotion of fear, gives us the opportunity to do. It is to take action, right? And as we said in part 1, it's to take action to ensure our survival, whether that's on a physical level, emotional level, mental level, an energetic level. It is to ensure our safety and survival. So when we look at one end of the spectrum, we have action. So often when you have a sense of fear, you want to come back to this end of the spectrum and simply ask, what action do I need to take right now to ensure my safety and survival? And kind of initiate that movement into action. Because on the other end of the spectrum, when we become extremely overwhelmed, the other end of the spectrum, when it comes to fear, is paralysis. So we do nothing, we stay in the same position. There's limited opportunity for growth. There's limited opportunity for action. There's limited opportunity for moving forward. So that is the spectrum when it comes to the emotion of fear. We can go from action all the way to paralysis. And so in between those 2 points, we also have different feelings like anxiety, worry, confusion, chaos, panic. These are all things that play somewhere on the spectrum of fear. What we can do when we are encountering fear, and as I said, I in the first series, I don't think that there has been a more you know more a better time in modern history for us to look at the emotion of fear. We are going through unprecedented events in our local and global communities, and so this is our opportunity to really think about what action we can take. And as I said before, we are not necessarily saying that it's easy. I understand, personally, in this time, I have gone through myself a range of these emotions. So it's not about negating any of that as an experience, but it's just about coming back to that focal point of action. action for the purpose of creating a sense of safety and a sense of survival for yourself on a physical, emotional, mental, and energetic level. So, the last thing I want to say before we end part two is that there is a lot of talk sometimes in the spiritual community where we compare love as being the opposite of fear. And I personally want to give a different perspective. For me, love is love. You know, it's incomparable. There's nothing that compares to the experience of love. So I don't necessarily ever equate love as the opposite of fear. If I do, I would have to say love is the opposite of everything, every emotion, right? And also, when I do that, when I say love is the opposite of fear, I also limit the opportunity that fear brings us. Because again, we go back into labeling it as bad versus good, right? So just keep that in mind. Love can be in every moment, in every emotion, whether it's an emotion that feels good, whether it's an emotion that feels uncomfortable, there's still a space for love there. And love can inspire us for every stage of our emotional experience. So when we are in the state of action, when we're in a state of fear and we're considering what action to take, we can definitely tap into love and make sure whatever action that we're taking is inspired by love, for sure. And fear can really inspire us to act on our love for life. So there is room for love in every emotion. We do not need to hold it in opposition. And we can give, when we don't hold it in opposition, we can give fear an opportunity to give us, um, different ways of expressing our survival, of expressing our need for safety, and for us to take action. So I hope that gives you something to consider. I'm going to end part two. I'm going to come back with part three, and we're going to talk a little bit more about fear from an Ayurvedic perspective. But I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. And please, there is a host of wellness tips and tools for you here to stop in every day at the ZENTS Wellness Room and get your daily dose of balance, well-being, and happiness. So thank you so much, and I'll see you at part three. Bye-bye.